One of the sayings that is often brought out in discussions of fire prevention is an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. If you can perform a few interventions on the outset to try to reduce the likelihood of a fire, then you're certainly going to be better off than you would be to have to rebuild after the fire. Now, things are complicated when a person has dementia or when you are caretaking for a person who has Alzheimer's or some other cognitive impairment, because they can get into things that cause the risk of fire to go up. They might be less cognizant of certain things like fire alarms going off that might help them to avoid injury or death. So in this video, we're going to talk about some general fire prevention tips. We're going to concentrate on smoke detectors. I'll actually install a smoke detector just to kind of make sure that everybody's on the same page. In addition, we'll say a few words about the kitchen because of all the locations in the house, the kitchen is the most likely for fire to occur. Keep a fire extinguisher handy. Now the trick here is to keep one out of sight so that the person with Alzheimer's disease doesn't move it or doesn't trigger it accidentally or purposely. Additionally, there are different fire extinguishers that are calibrated for different types of fires. Suffice it to say that different types of fires are going to require different extinguishing equipment. According to the National Fire Protection Association, the number one cause is unattended cooking. The idea that the kitchen is a dangerous place makes sense because you have a lot of heat sources. Sometimes you have open flame, heating elements. You've got a number of flammable materials. You have electricity, sometimes natural gas, depending on what utilities you have. So there's a lot of factors that come together that make the kitchen a dangerous place. So just a few tips for helping you to keep the kitchen safe. Number one, check inside of the oven before turning it on. If you have children and if you have a cognitively impaired older adult, there's no guarantee that they're not going to stick something into the oven, whether accidentally or on purpose. And if something is in that oven, not only could that be a fire risk then, but it could also give off noxious vapors or toxic fumes, depending on the kind of material that it's made out of. If you have to cook for an Alzheimer's afflicted loved one, then it's best to try to keep them occupied in another area. You want to keep them away from the kitchen. I mean, a lot of this seems basic, but if you are distracted or if they come in, they could end up burning themselves or starting a fire. Some resources here will say you want a 3-foot safe zone around your cooking area. I don't know that there's a specific foot amount that would be necessary because a larger, older adult could trip over 3 feet and stumble into a hot stove. So if it's possible, again, to try to sequester the area, maybe seal them off with a gate, or at least occupy them by giving them something to do for the duration of time that you're cooking, you're probably going to be better off. You also want to try to stay tethered to the kitchen area while you're cooking. Now, this can be a huge challenge if you also have to be watching the person who has Alzheimer's. Baby monitors can help. You can set up the monitors so that you can both watch them and attend to your cooking. It might also be a good idea to cook in advance. If you caretake for them in their home and you live in a different area, you might prepare the meals somewhere else and bring them. You might consider ordering out. A lot of factors go into this. Obviously, ordering out is going to cost more than making the meal in the home, but if you can't do it safely, it might be worth it. But if you are going to cook, use timers to remind you of things that are on the stove. If you do end up having to divert your attention, the timer can be, again, a life-saving measure to bring your attention back to the hot thing that's on the stovetop. You also want to keep flammable items like dish towels and other things away from the heating source. Some of this is common sense, but when you are dealing with a person who's cognitively impaired, even if you have everything perfectly arranged and safely arranged, there's no telling that they haven't gone into the room and sort of shuffled things around. So always check. Never put anything on the stovetop, even if you think it's turned off. Don't allow them to put anything on the stovetop. Keep a careful watch over the appliances, including the toaster, the stovetop, the oven, other heat-generating appliances in the kitchen. 3 out of 5 home fire deaths occur at a property that did not have a functional smoke detector. So this is one of the crucial interventions that you can perform. It can be life-saving. They're very inexpensive, and they can be set up throughout the house, and they should be. Now, a couple of tips for the smoke detectors themselves. Generally, you will read that smoke detectors are only going to be good for about 10 years, and on the smoke detector itself, you will find a manufacturer date stamped on. So you just want to add 10, and every 10 years, no matter what the condition of the smoke detector is, in your opinion, you should replace it according to the prevailing wisdom. So if you're going into the house of a loved one, and maybe it was their house for many years, it's possible that if they have smoke detectors, they might not be working or they might be outdated. One of the very first things you want to do is to go through the smoke detectors, make sure that all of them are functional, powered up correctly and so on, but also that they haven't outlasted their usable life. Now, as a separate item, this is a carbon monoxide detector, not a smoke detector, and so you can see on this one here, the manufacture date is actually 1997. It still appeared to function, but it is doubtful whether its sensitivity was going to be as good as it was when the thing was first purchased, and so it finally did go out, and that's what brought it to my attention. However, it should have been changed probably a while back. Now, there's also a few tips related to the placement of the smoke detectors. If it's a wall-mounted unit, then the information that I saw says that it should be between 4 and 12 inches from the ceiling. If it's a ceiling-mounted unit, it should be about 4 to 12 inches from the nearest wall. Obviously, smoke rises, so you don't want to have the smoke detector low on the ground. The guidelines for carbon monoxide or CO detectors are a bit different. It's also worth testing the smoke detectors periodically. Many sources will say at least once a month. Now, this can be perturbing to a person who has Alzheimer's disease or dementia. You might wait until such time as they can get out of the house. If you can get help, possibly to watch them or to take them for a walk, maybe you could test the smoke detectors in their absence. But this might be a trickier part for people who get agitated if they hear these loud noises. But it's still vital to make sure that the smoke detectors that you have are in good working condition. Finally, you want to have some kind of a schedule for replacing the batteries. It's possible some of your detectors run on the standard electricity in the house, and those have pluses and minuses. Obviously, if the power goes out, maybe that's a minus. Some of them have battery backups. You want to make sure that you have battery replacement down to a science. Some people will replace the batteries, let's say, every holiday, let's say New Year's Eve. Every time New Year's comes around, they just know to change the batteries. Or maybe it's calibrated to clock changes. So, for example, when you reset your clock for daylight savings time or go off of daylight savings time, maybe you also go through the house and replace all the batteries in the smoke detectors. Whichever route you take, obviously, you just want to be mindful that that is the time. If you forget that you're supposed to change the smoke detectors, then it doesn't help you. You're also going to want smoke detectors near every bedroom. If the doors to the bedroom are normally closed, you might want one detector in the bedroom and one detector out of the bedroom. You want detectors on every floor of the house, every level, including the basement. It is possible to get alarms that are interconnected, and if you do that, when one goes off, they all will go off, which can be advantageous. Those might be a little bit more expensive or require some special installation, but it can be worth it. Additionally, more elaborate smoke alarms might have flashing lights. So if your loved one has hearing loss, a flashing light might give them an assist if the alarm goes off. And there are also what are called bed shakers, which can help to arouse heavy sleepers in the event that the smoke alarm goes off. Now, this can be an assist for sensory impaired people as well. Obviously, with Alzheimer's disease, the agitation is an issue, as well as the memory, because you can't count on your loved one to remember what to do in the case of a smoke alarm going off. There's never any substitute for careful watchfulness. You need to be vigilant. You need to have a plan. So if a smoke detector goes off, you want to be there to be able to help your relative get out of the house safely. That's the primary thing, and then you would call the fire department from a safe distance away from the property. Now I'll go ahead and demonstrate a simple smoke alarm installation. This isn't going to be earth-shattering information, I realize that, but I think sometimes we assume too much. But if you do not want or need this kind of a refresher or a tutorial, feel free to sign off here, and I hope to see you again in another video. But if you'd like to see me walk through a smoke alarm replacement, then follow me. So obviously for this installation you're going to need some kind of a smoke alarm to install. Now this particular model is very inexpensive. So opening the package, you've got 2 screws, 2 wall anchors, smoke detector itself, installation instructions, and if we turn the plate, you see that it actually has a battery installed in it, in the cavity, but it wasn't actually making contact. The contacts weren't positioned correctly to power the unit, and that's obviously so that the battery isn't worn down, number one, in the box, and also so it doesn't go off while it's in the box. Now, tool-wise, we're just going to need a screwdriver, or you can use a drill. I have a number 2 drill bit, but again, hand tools work just as well for this. Now, I also always have separate wall anchors, and this is because, in my experience in the past, wall anchors can often be broken. You could drop them. Now, you're going to need to drill a hole for the wall anchor, and that's what the drill bit's going to be for. This is a 3/16, and that's what I'm going to use to install it. It's a fairly straightforward procedure. To mark where you're going to drill, you're going to position the mounting plate against the wall or against the ceiling, in my case, and then you're just going to make a mark where you'd actually be drilling for the wall anchors. The first thing is going to be to remove the mounting plate that's already on the ceiling. Plate, having been up there for a while, probably needs to be just kind of pried loose. And there it is. One of the wall anchors is stuck to the plate and just came out with it. However, the other wall anchor is still inside of the ceiling. I pried that one out. My thinking there is that the wall anchor may have become brittle, even though these are not heavy objects. For the second part, you're going to take your mounting hardware. Again, I'm going to take my pencil, I'm going to put it on the ceiling where I want it, and I'm going to mark the holes. Now, because there was already a smoke detector up here before, there's 2 open holes in the ceiling, so I'm going to drill holes offset a little bit in a different location so that I'm not going into a pre-drilled hole. So with my drill, I'm going to remove the drill bit, put in my 3/16. Probably want to use safety goggles for that part of it. I'm going to open up the package of wall anchors, press the first anchor in, press the second anchor in. You may use a hammer or a mallet to kind of give it a little tap. In a pinch, the back of the screwdriver can work for that. Now I'm going to remove the 3/16 drill bit, put back in the screwdriver bit. Now you're going to grab your mounting plate and 1 screw, and I'm going to start the screw through the hole. I'm just going to kind of hold it in position there with the drill. I'm not tightening it down, so you can see it hangs freely there and spins. Meanwhile, I'm going to get the second screw, and then I'm going to line up the plate with the second screw. I'm going to drill both of them in, and now it's tight. You do not have to over tighten it or that plastic could crack. Now this particular smoke detector, as we saw, came with a battery, so now the only thing you have to do is line up the positive and the negative terminal of the battery with the positive and the negative terminal on the smoke detector, making sure to fold this little plastic piece down so that the battery presses it in, the plastic piece is down. The little plastic piece is there so that you can see whether the battery's installed correctly or not, and the idea there is you're not under any illusion that the smoke detector will operate without the battery installed. But once it's in there, I'll go ahead and press the test button, and then we'll set it into place here. You can see the little mounting holes here are going to correspond with the tabs on the mounting plate. And then you're going to give it a little twist, and now it hangs securely and it's installed. Please understand that this is meant for general informational or entertainment purposes only. If you require personalized help, you need to reach out to experts in your area. For example, local fire departments may provide guidance or assistance to people as long as you're in their fire protection district. You might also find it helpful to call various charitable or other organizations, for example, the Alzheimer's Association, the Red Cross, and you may have other groups in your area as well. I hope something that I said was of interest to you or of use to you. If it was, I ask that you like the video. If you'd like to see additional content, then I invite you to subscribe to the channel. Click the notification bell to be alerted to that content as it becomes available. But either way, I thank you so much for joining me today, and I look forward to seeing you again in another video. Thank you so much.